Hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to go live on our social media sites. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. On behalf of Strategic Vision Institute, I welcome you all at our latest webinar on the Pakistan's energy security and role of nuclear technology. Before we proceed, I would like to mention that this webinar will be conducted in the form of a panel discussion, during which each speaker will be given 15 minutes. If anyone is having trouble hearing or viewing the webinar or is having any form of connectivity issues, please do mention this in the chat and we'll try our best to address the issue from our end. Kindly note that by default, mics of all the attendees will be on mute and only panelists will be allowed to use mic and video. Please do include your name as well as your organizational affiliation along with your question. The questions will then be presented to our panel by the moderator during the questions and answer sessions accordingly. While we fully encourage you to participate, we request you to please brief in your questions. We shall try our best to ensure that all questions get answered within our allotted time. Please further note that the opinions voiced at the SVI platform are independent opinions of the speakers and the audiences, and not the official policy of the SVI. This is an open house activity which will be reported in media. The session will be live streamed on our Facebook. The full recording of the webinar will be available on the official website and YouTube channel of the SVI. If anyone would like to tag or post screen grabs of the event or on their personal blogs, web pages, or social media, please do not forget to mention that the webinar was organized by the SVI. For today's webinar, Pakistan's energy security and role of nuclear technology, we are delighted and thankful to have a very distinguished panel of 3 eminent speakers. Now, let me introduce you to our worthy speakers in chair. Our first distinguished speaker for today's webinar would be Dr. Ansar Parvez. Dr. Ansar Parvez is currently serving as advisor to National Command Authority. Previously, he has served as chairman, Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission. In his various capacities in PAEC, he has played a pivotal role in the development of human resource and application of nuclear technology in the areas of energy, medicine, and agriculture. For his services, he has been awarded Hilali Imtiaz. He has traveled widely and has also chaired the chairman of IAEA Board of Governors. Dr. Parvez has a master's degree in physics and nuclear technology and has earned a PhD in nuclear engineering and science from Graceland Polytechnic Institute, USA. He started his career as a PAEC faculty member and also spent 2 years as visiting faculty member at Purdue University, USA. He organizes a senior officers leadership course at PAEC regularly and is also a chairman Board of Governors National Center for Physics. Today, he'll be speaking on nuclear power generation and Pakistan's energy security. Our second eminent speaker for today's webinar would be Dr. Zafar Ali. Dr. Zafar Ali is a former Director General, Strategic Export Control Division. He has wide experience of strategic export controls, arms control, and disarmament affairs. He holds PhD in Defense and Strategic Studies from Qasim University. Our third eminent speaker for today's webinar would be Mr. Waqar Ahmad. Mr. Waqar Ahmad has worked for more than 30 years at the Pakistan Institute of Nuclear Science and Technology in the fields of nuclear physics, material science, and computer simulation studies. There, he was the head of Atomic and Nuclear Radiation Group. Then head Human Resource Development, head Scientific Information Division. Later, he moved to Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission and became DG International Affairs and Training. Finally, he was posted to Vienna as Minister Technical. He retired from PAEC as Chief Scientist. Today, he will be speaking on nuclear technology for sustainable development. The webinar would be chaired by worthy Mr. Parvez. Mr. Parvez is a nuclear mechanical engineer who joined the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission in 1963 and was sent to Canada, where he did his master's in nuclear engineering from University of Toronto in 1965, and then worked at Canadian General Electric on the design of CANUP. In 1971, he returned to Pakistan and worked at CANUP, and then started establishing workshops in various cities of Pakistan to manufacture spare parts and nuclear equipment as required by the nuclear power plants, as well as for other projects of PAEC in the country. In spite of the international embargoes as a result of 1974 nuclear tests by India, Pakistan's nuclear activities continued because of these indigenous capabilities. He then negotiated an agreement in 1998 with CERN to manufacture equipment for them and also to supply manpower to work in the facility in Geneva, Switzerland. In 1994, he initiated the activity of supply of equipment manufactured in PAEC workshops for the nuclear power plants being established in Pakistan by the Chinese. He has also played a significant role in the defense and classified activities of PAEC. He was promoted to the rank of Chairman PAEC in 2001 and retired in 2006. He was then appointed Secretary Minister of Science and Technology from 2006 to 2008, and then member Engineering Planning Commission from 2008 to 2010. Since January 2021, he is advisor SVI. He is a proud recipient of national awards, Tane Imtiaz, Hilale Imtiaz, and Sitara Imtiaz. Thank you. Now I invite Mr. Parvez to give his welcome introductory remarks and to please conduct the proceedings of the webinar. Mr. Parvez, please.
Thank you very much. I have 10 minutes to say something about the session today, and I would like to just give a few points of the history of the Atomic Energy Commission for the information of all the listeners. And the Atomic Energy Commission was created in 1955, as long ago as 1955, when Pakistan was only 8 years old. And the commission was created finally, the Atomic Energy Commission was created in 1956. And then in 1965, we had our first research reactor, PARR, in Islamabad. And then in 1965, on December 25, 1965, Dr. Usmani, the then chairman, visited Canada and signed on, this was Christmas Day, Dr. Usmani signed the agreement with the Canadian General Electric to negotiate and sign a final contract with for construction of CANUP. So CANUP has a long history, and CANUP has continued to operate for 50 years till this year when it was shut down. And in spite of the Indian international embargoes that followed the 1974 explosion by India of nuclear weapons. And the reason why we could continue to operate CANUP for so long is that we developed our capability. The Atomic Energy Commission developed our capability to manufacture equipment and devices and systems in our two organizations. One was the mechanical organization, and the other was the computers and instrumentation center. The mechanical organization was created by me, and the computer section was created by Mr. Jamshed Hashmi. These organizations continue to work and contribute not only to the nuclear power plants in the country, but to industry as well, and earn a profit out of that. And as was mentioned in my introduction, we signed a contract with the Chinese to supply them equipment manufactured in these workshops for installation in the plants that they were constructing for us at Chashma. And that was kind of export, because the Chinese would have brought that equipment from China. Now we were giving it to them to install in our plants. So the Atomic Energy Commission is a story of success, a great story of success. And I would like to, and we would like to listen to our Minister very much.
And Dr. Ansar, please.
Hey, thank you very much. So thank you very much, Batsa, actually for chairing this session. And it's very nice to have you amongst the audience. Okay, thank you. So the topic today is that I am going to talk about is nuclear power generation and Pakistan energy security. As a matter of fact, on the very first slide, I have shown all the nuclear power plants that we have. This is nuclear that Batsa was just talking about, which actually laid the foundation of nuclear power in the country. It operated safely for 50 years and has now been shut down. Then we have 4 nuclear power plants operating at Chashma. They are 325 megawatt to 340 megawatt. Combined, they produce a total power of 1335 megawatt. And then we have 2 large generation 3 power plants operating at Canop. One of these plants is already functioning and operating very well, and the other plant is nearing completion and will come on power early next year. Combined, when all these 6 power plants, which is 4 at Chashma and 2 at Canop, would be operating, nuclear power would be about 8% of the total installed generating capacity of the country. Now, for any country to make progress, as all of you know here, it's very important that it has an uninterrupted supply of energy at an affordable price. तो इसको हम कहते हैं, we term it as energy security, और इसका मतलब ये है कि the energy resources that we have should be accessible to us. They should be affordable so that the price is not too high, and they are also reliable. That is, we can rely on them to operate when we require them to operate. So, and why it is so important, as all of you know, there is a direct relationship between the gross domestic product and the energy consumption in any country. And here is a graph in which you can see different countries onto the right hand top of this curve, which shows the gross domestic GDP per person and also the energy consumption pattern, per capita energy consumption pattern. And as you can see, Pakistan, written in the green, is almost at the bottom of this curve, which means low energy consumption, which also means low GDP per person. Right now, Pakistan GDP per person is about $1,100 to $1,200 per person. Okay, आप सबको अंदाजा है कि बहुत कम है, लोग तो 20,000, 50,000 and something like that बात कर सकते हैं. And the other important thing is, whenever you are making an energy policy, we realize that, and I think everyone understands that, it has a direct bearing on the economic security of the country. Because, as I just said, कि अगर आपके पास energy नहीं है, then probably you cannot develop economically. It also has a direct implication on the environmental security, because as you have seen now happening, that if you continue to use fossil fuels, which is coal and oil and other things, then you will have this climate change effect and the global temperature could rise. And also coal power plants by themselves, they contribute to pollution. They emit carbon monoxides and other chemicals which are harmful to human health. And of course, all of these factors combined together have a direct bearing on the national security as well. Because if the country is not economically strong, is not economically viable, then it's also very difficult for it to maintain its defense apparatus, maintain its defense capabilities. So whatever energy policy a country has a direct bearing on these things. Or agar aap isme, if you falter on this thing, then you have to pay a price. As a matter of fact, as Pakistan at various points has been paying the price, sometimes in terms of load shedding, sometimes in terms of excess capacity, sometimes in face of circular debts. All of these things add up to hurt the economy of the country. And because if there is load shedding, of course, and they say that one electricity unit that should be produced that is not produced costs about 50 to 60 cents to the economy. So that's a major drawback. And how important this thing is, this is a US think tank, and I'll just read it out, which said, and this is like for some 20, 25 years back from some day. Energy security is national security. Because the fate of the US economy is so closely tied to oil, the US has been forced to spend tremendous resources securing the world's oil supply. This burdens our military, drains defense budget, and distort overseas policy objectives. So what I'm trying to say here is that energy in itself is very important. And as a matter of fact, as also seen by this statement from a US think tank, that it also affects your military policy, your defense objectives, and ultimately your foreign policy. Now we come to this very important diagram. That is, at one point in time, like about 40, 50 years ago, लोगों का ख्याल था कि they will run out of fossil fuels. I know when I was a student, at that time, the concern was that one day there will be no coal, one day there will be no oil, and what will happen? And as a matter of fact, luckily at that time, nuclear had come up and people were building nuclear power plants and thinking this is a big relief. This is also environment friendly, and it will also decrease the pressure on these fossil fuels, which appear to be running out. But then, as you know, then this climate change issue came up, and then people realized that the global temperatures are increasing, and people realized that this is because of the greenhouse gases or CO2s which are emitted by these fossil fuels. And then there was this study which was carried out in a university in UK, which said that really, honestly speaking, if you want to maintain the global temperature, you cannot consume 80% of the coal that you have, or 49% of the gas, and 33% of oil. This amount of fossil fuel that you already have cannot be consumed. अगर आप इसको consume करेंगे तो फिर आप अपने global temperature और उसकी criteria जो है meet नहीं कर सकते. तो actually इसका हल क्या था? इसका हल ये था naturally कि भाई nuclear power जो है उसको बनाया जाता है. Nuclear power शुरू में तो बनी, but this is a very interesting graph जो मैं which I show and which I keep updating, that over the last 20 years, as a matter of fact, the total energy production from nuclear is almost steady. It is not increasing. It's not, as a matter of fact, decreased around 2011-12 when this Fukushima accident took place and all the Japanese nuclear power plants went out of business. और उसके बाद फिर ये बढ़ रही है, कम हो रही है, but it is almost steady. और इसकी वजह क्या है? इसकी, in spite of the climate change threat, in spite of the fact कि लोग ये समझ रहे हैं कि nuclear is friendly to the climate, और जो fossil और दूसरे हैं वो climate change को affect कर रहे हैं और किए चले जा रहे हैं. But the reason is, number one, solar nuclear. Why did nuclear not come up? एक तो there was a perception of nuclear safety. जो लोगों में perception है of safety of nuclear power plant, unfortunately the nuclear industry could not tackle that. And the other reason is that solar, and when they became very cheap, or people thought that yes, these are environment friendly and we can go to them. अगरचे solar और wind का अपने issues हैं जो आहिस्ता-आहिस्ता some people are pointing that out, and as time progresses and as more solars are built, तो पता चलेगा कि इसमें क्या complications हैं, solar panels के कितने hazard हैं, कितना वो area cover करते हैं compared to other power plants, कितना आपको area चाहिए जिससे आप reasonable, and of course they are not base load plants. तो ये तो थोड़ा सा I just gave a brief introduction of the international situation and nuclear in general, and then we come to Pakistan itself. इसमें बड़ी थोड़ी एक study थी which as a matter of fact is now about 5 to 10 years old, और अभी हालात उससे भी खराब हो गए कि हमारे पास all the oil that we have and all the gas that we have, अगर हम nuclear उससे power plants बनाते हैं 1000 megawatt का, और उसको हम कहते हैं कि अगर हमने एक plant बनाया 1000 megawatt का तो 30 साल चलना भी चाहिए, तो हम कितने plant बना सकते हैं total? जितना भी पाकिस्तान में ऑयल है, अगर हम इसका कोई और इस्तेमाल ना करें, we put it only in the power 1, और गैस only 13. सिर्फ 13 पावर प्लांट्स हम बना सकते हैं गैस की बेसिस पे, जो पाकिस्तानी गैस है, और ये पहला है। उसके बाद गैस बहुत कम हो गई है। एंड रिसेंटली आपने कल परसों किसी मिनिस्टर का बयान जरूर पढ़ा होगा, वो ये कह रहा है कि हमारे पास जो लोकल रिजर्व्स हैं गैस के, वी आर रनिंग आउट ऑफ देम। सो एज अ मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट, एज फार एज फॉसिल फ्यूल इज कंसर्न, उसका कोई पाकिस्तान में प्रोस्पेक्ट नहीं। ऑफ कोर्स देयर इज थर्ड कोल, लेकिन उसके अपने प्रॉब्लम्स और उसकी अपनी कॉम्प्लिकेशंस हैं। तो फिर क्या है उसके बाद, जो थोड़ा सा जैसे अभी भट्ट साहब ने भी कहा कि जो न्यूक्लियर है, थोड़ा सा हम ग्लांस उस पर थोड़ी सी और डिटेल के साथ कर लेते हैं। ये न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट कैनूप जो था, ये परमानेंट शटडाउन हो गया 2 अगस्त को, एज यू कैन सी हियर। और ये 50 साल इसने बड़ा अच्छा चला, और ना सिर्फ इसका फायदा सिर्फ ये हुआ कि इसने एक थोड़ी सी बिजली जनरेट करके कराची इलेक्ट्रिक ग्रिड को दी, लेकिन जो टेक्नोलॉजी है स्पेयर पार्ट्स की, फ्यूल की और दूसरी, उसमें इन्होंने इस कैनूप में प्रोवाइडेड अस अ लॉट ऑफ हेल्प। एंड ऑफ कोर्स उसके बाद वी हैव 4 चश्मा पावर प्लांट्स, एज यू कैन ऑलरेडी वी ऑलरेडी टॉक्ड अबाउट, वहाँ पे 4 प्लांट है। एंड व्हेनेवर आई शो दिस स्लाइड, तो मैं बात जरूर कहता हूँ कि कोई भी बंदा हु इज इंटरेस्टेड इन न्यूक्लियर पावर, या जिसका करियर, जैसे भट्ट साहब हैं यहाँ पे, या मैं हूँ, जिनका करियर न्यूक्लियर पावर में गुजरा है, उनके लिए इससे खूबसूरत कोई साइट नहीं हो सकती कि 4 न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट्स खड़े हैं और चल रहे हैं, और इन अ रो। और इफ यू लुक एट द कैपेसिटी फैक्टर ऑफ दीज पावर प्लांट्स, तो दूसरे जो IPPs हैं, इंडिपेंडेंट पावर प्रोड्यूसर्स, जो हमारे हाइड्रो प्लांट्स हैं, जो पब्लिक सेक्टर में थर्मल प्लांट्स हैं, उन सारों के मुकाबले में जो न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट्स का जो कैपेसिटी फैक्टर है ओवर द लास्ट 5 years, वो ज्यादा है। इट इज इन द नेबरहुड ऑफ 80%। और ये बात सिर्फ इन लास्ट 5 साल के लिए सही नहीं है, उससे पिछले कितने भी पिछले सालों में चले जाएं, दिस इज ऑलवेज ट्रू। और अभी ये जो 2 प्लांट्स बड़े जनरेशन 3 के बन रहे हैं, एक उसमें से बन गया और एक बनने वाला है, इंशाल्लाह जल्दी कंप्लीट हो जाएगा। तो ये अलग 1100 मेगावाट के प्लांट हैं। और जो कॉस्ट है अभी जो न्यूक्लियर की पड़ रही है, एज यू कैन सी फ्रॉम हियर, कि अगर आप ऑयल पे जाएं HSD, तो वो तो बहुत ही महंगा है। फर्नेस ऑयल भी 14 रुपए में पड़ रहा है। गैस और न्यूक्लियर तकरीबन कंपेरेबल है, और गैस इसमें से वो गैस भी शामिल है जो लोकल गैस है, जिसकी कीमत का सही अंदाजा नहीं हो सकता, व्हाटएवर। सो न्यूक्लियर इज आल्सो चीप, as is shown here. Nuclear is also more productive capacity factor wise, and it's also reliable, of course, अगर इसका capacity factor higher है। तो ये न्यूक्लियर की कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स हैं जिसके हिसाब से हम समझते हैं कि इट कैन प्ले अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड डिस्टिंग्विश्ड रोल इन पाकिस्तान्स एनर्जी सेक्टर। अच्छा, बेस्ड ऑन दिस, एक न्यूक्लियर पावर विजन was prepared and was approved by National Command Authority, I think 2011 or 12 or sometime around that time. तो उसका जो अभी तक का पार्ट है, वो as you can see from this first 4 blue lines, वो तो पूरा हो रहा है और पूरा हुआ है, लेकिन अभी फिलवक्त आफ्टर K2 is complete, तो हमारा कोई न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन नहीं होगा। तो उसके बाद फिर अगर कोई न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट आएगा तो वो कम से कम उसमें 7-8 साल एटलीस्ट इट विल टेक, बिकॉज दैट इज द टाइम दैट इट टेक्स टू बिल्ड अ न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट। अच्छा, अभी जो एक और चीज विच ऑलमोस्ट माय, एज यू कैन सी हियर, इज ऑलमोस्ट माय सेकंड लास्ट स्लाइड, के जो न्यूक्लियर के जो पावर प्लांट है जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान ने इस वक्त अप्रूव की हुई है, एज यू कैन सी हियर, इंडिकेटिव जनरेटिंग कैपेसिटी एक्सपेंशन प्लान, के नेक्स्ट फ्यू इयर्स का 2030 तक का एक्सपेंशन प्लान क्या है, उसमें एज यू कैन सी वेरी क्लियरली कि न्यूक्लियर को 33,635 दिया हुआ है, विच इज C4, C1, C2, C3, C4 एंड K2, K3। इसका मतलब है कि उसमें फिलहाल उन्होंने न्यूक्लियर को नहीं रखा। तो इसलिए नहीं रखा कि उनके कॉस्ट उन्होंने देखा, एंड कॉस्ट सोलर की और विंड की इज चीपर। ऑफ कोर्स सोलर एंड विंड अगर आप लगाएंगे तो इट्स ऑलवेज चीप। तो न्यूक्लियर उन्होंने छोड़ दिया, बाकी जो दूसरे पावर प्लांट्स हैं जो ऑलरेडी कमिटेड हैं वो उन्होंने उसके अंदर रख लिए। तो इसका मतलब है कि जो इस वक्त गवर्नमेंट का प्लान है उसके अंदर न्यूक्लियर फिलहाल तो शामिल नहीं है। इसकी इम्प्लीकेशंस क्या होंगी ये तो ओनली टाइम विल टेल, लेकिन एक बात बहुत क्लियर है कि अगर आप न्यूक्लियर के ऊपर रिलाई नहीं करेंगे तो आपकी विंड, सोलर और हाइड्रो, no matter whether they are cheap or expensive, they are not base load, and which means that for the base load, as I have already said, कि आपके पास अपने तो resources हैं नहीं, अगर आपने fossil के लगाने हैं तो you will have to rely on imports. आपको fuel import ही करना पड़ेगा all the time. और उससे फिर आप अपना बेस लोड चलाएंगे. एंड ऑफ कोर्स सोलर, गैस और हाइड्रो जो है वो आपको सर्विस तो जरूर देंगे, लेकिन सोलर को आप बेस लोड कभी गिर नहीं सकते, बिकॉज इट डिपेंड वेदर सन कम्स आउट और नॉट, विंड ब्लोज और डजंट ब्लो. और हमें अच्छी तरह पता है कि हाइड्रो सर्दियों के मौसम में दिसंबर जनवरी में दे ऑपरेट एट अ वेरी वेरी लो कैपेसिटी फैक्टर, क्योंकि उस वक्त पानी नहीं होता उनको चलाने के लिए. तो आपको एक जो अल्टीमेटली एनर्जी पॉलिसी और सिक्योर एनर्जी पॉलिसी में मेरा तो ख्याल ये है, खैर मैं बायस्ड भी है बिकॉज आई बिलोंग टू दिस न्यूक्लियर, कि न्यूक्लियर शुड कंटिन्यू टू प्ले एन इम्पोर्टेंट रोल, और इसका जो हिस्सा है इट शुड इंक्रीज फ्रॉम 8% टू एटलीस्ट अबाउट 20%, ताकि आपके पास 20% ऑफ दी कैपेसिटी जो है वो एक सिक्योर बेस लोड की शक्ल में हो. बाकी यू कैन ऑफ कोर्स बिल्ड एज मच सोलर, एज मच गैस एंड एज मच हाइड्रो दैट यू नीड. अभी क्या हो रहा है कि अगर आप इसी तरह करते रहेंगे तो आपका यही फेट हमेशा रहेगा. एज यू कैन सी हियर कि जो पाकिस्तान की एक्सपोर्ट अर्निंग्स हैं उसका 50% हिस्टोरिकली गोज इन एनर्जी इंपोर्ट्स. और ये जो लेटेस्ट डेटा मैंने जो दिखाया अभी भी देख लीजिए 2021 का, 29-21 लिखा है, एक्चुअली इट शुड बी 2021. तो 2020 और 2021 का जो डेटा, इसमें टोटल अर्निंग हमारी है $25.6 बिलियन, और उसमें से जो एनर्जी इंपोर्ट है वो हमारी $12.9 बिलियन है, विच इज ऑलमोस्ट 1/2. और अगर आप ये ही इसी के ऊपर रिलाई करते रहेंगे, RLNG इंपोर्ट करते, ऑयल इंपोर्ट कर लें, ऑयल का खैर और भी यूज है अदर देन बिल्डिंग पावर प्लांट्स, आपको सारी ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर में चाहिए, लेकिन मतलब इसको हम थोड़ा सा तो कम कर सकते हैं कंटिन्यूइंग बेसिस के ऊपर अगर हम न्यूक्लियर का वो बढ़ाएं. एंड एज ऑलवेज से कि वन ऑफ द थिंग्स के न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट बना लेना ऐसा ही है जैसा कि अपना घर बना लेना, और जो फॉसिल्स हैं जिनकी कीमत बदलती रहती है तेल की, वो ऐसा ही है जैसे हमेशा किराए पे रहना. तो अगर आप हमेशा किराए पे रहना चाहते हैं तो ऑफ कोर्स यू कैन लिव विदाउट न्यूक्लियर, लेकिन न्यूक्लियर हैज डेमोन्स्ट्रेटेड over its lifetime in Pakistan, it's not only safe, it's not only reliable, it's not only economical, ये जरूरत पड़ने पे हमेशा आपके लिए वहाँ पे मौजूद रहता है. So thank you very much. I think मैं इतना ही इस पे बात खत्म कर रहा हूँ.
Thank you, Dr. Ansar. Now I would request the next speaker, Dr. Zafar Ali, to please make his presentation. Dr. Ansar Parvez, you did it in 15 minutes exactly. Thank you very much. Could I suggest that we go to the next speaker if he's available, and we will come back to you after you have solved your problem. So is Mr. Waqar Ahmad but online?
Yes, sir.
I would like him to make his presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this very elite forum. And the title of my talk is exactly in accordance with the mandate of Pakistan Nuclear Society, which is to promote peaceful applications of nuclear science and technology, mainly for the socio-economic development. Well, whenever we talk about nuclear technology, instantly we recall what happened in the end of the Second World War. It was 1945, 6th August, when an aeroplane appeared over Hiroshima, dropped a bomb, and the single bomb killed 90,000 people. After 3 days, another plane came over Nagasaki, dropped a similar bomb, which claimed 60,000 lives. So this was the power of a small bomb. And then there was a very deep concern that so much energy, tremendous amount of energy from a very small amount of fuel, why not to be used for the benefit of mankind? So this deep concern made the people think that why to go towards these nuclear weapons? Why not to use it for the benefit of human beings? And the first step in this scenario was taken by President of United States, Eisenhower, when he made a very historical speech in the General Assembly of the United Nations. And the title of that speech was Atoms for Peace. And this was the turning point. And this led to the creation of IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, in 1957. Well, realizing the importance of this important step, Pakistan instantly joined that IAEA because it was looking very beneficial. And a very comprehensive program has already been chalked out by Atomic Energy Commission authorities. Well, they thought that we should have in these fields, nuclear material, nuclear medicine, nuclear agriculture. In all these areas, we must exact. We should not be lagging behind the world. So a very comprehensive program was chalked out in the early stages of nuclear energy when this Atomic Energy Commission was built. And instantly after, consequently, the first nuclear medical center was created in Karachi in 1960. And right now, we have 18 nuclear medical centers in operation. 19th one is almost complete. And you see, only not many people know that more than 80% of the cancer patients are treated at Atomic Energy Commission hospitals. Of course, there are other, Aga Khan and Shaukat Khanum, which are bigger hospitals, and many patients are treated over there. But this was for the sustainable development in the country in the nuclear medicine that we are expanding and expanding. And new machinery like PET machines are adding in these hospitals, and these are all the state-of-the-art facilities. Similarly, in the field of agriculture, the first agriculture center was established at Tandujam. And then later on, the main purpose was to develop or to prepare new varieties of different crops like wheat, like sugarcane, like other maize and soya bean. And they exerted in quite a lot and then prepared so many varieties which are virus resistance, and of course the yield is also increased. And then the agriculture center was established at Faisalabad, and Niab is one of the great centers in the history of Pakistan. You know, Pakistan is a cotton producing country, and our 60% export is based on cotton products. And the Niab, once they established, they prepared Niab 78, a variety which was popular all over the world. And we say that it brought white revolution in the country. It was a very, very great yield. And then another center over there is also in the biotechnology center, is a very tremendous center. And then in 1965, our first nuclear reactor became operational at Nellore. And this was a turning point in the history of Pakistan because it has many different areas in which we are thinking that we have to exert, like there are divisions of nuclear physics, nuclear chemistry, nuclear material, and then other areas as well. And in this, as I just mentioned, that in the nuclear medical center, we have 18 nuclear medical centers. And previously, the radioisotopes which are used for these medical centers were imported from abroad. Like, for example, Molly-99, very important isotope. It was imported from South Africa. Of course, you have to pay quite a lot. But now all these radioisotopes like iodine-131, phosphorus, and this Molly-99, which is used for technetium generators, very extensively used in our nuclear medical center. These are all prepared at Pinstack. And this is a great step. Similarly, these radioisotopes are also used for hydrology purposes, for groundwater movement, and for salinity, and some other purposes as well. And you know, in our coastal area, there's a lot of problem of fresh water. And another step which Atomic Energy Commission took was building of desalination plant with our nuclear power plant in Karachi. And it was, you know, the saline water, the salted water of sea, with using the heat from this power plant. They made it portable, and then a lot of problems were solved in the coastal area of Pakistan. And then we have these, well, at Pinstack, there was another division which worked on quite a lot on the development of laser land lavabars. And these are quite popular in the agriculture sector. Farmers are very happy because with this you can save 30% of water, and you can also increase the yield by 20%. Then we have another plant at Parvez, Lahore, which is radiation based, and you can sterilize the medical goods as well as for food crops. And lot many food crops, because food security is another big problem. So if you preserve your food, or if you make it usable, then it is very important. In engineering setup, as you know, we have very good workshops, and the nuclear components are extremely difficult to get from outside, so we have to make these components at ourselves. One very big step that I would like to mention, that in 1974 India exploded the first tested the nuclear device. In 1974 there were a lot of embargoes, and the vendors, the Canadian, they stopped the fuel, and they refused to give the fuel to us. But the great credit goes to the engineers of Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission and scientists who made this fuel indigenously and keep the plant, because people were thinking that if there's no fuel, the plant will be closed. But they made this plant running, and as it was just mentioned with Dr. Ansar, it was working beyond its design life, 20 years beyond, and very safe. So it's a great credit to the engineers and indigenously. And this is all for this sustainable development in the country. Then we have some other areas in which, like, for example, coming to the fuel, as I was just mentioning, now we can say that Atomic Energy Commission is capable of cradle to grave approach, like, for example, for the exploration, and then, for example, mining, milling, refining, fuel fabrication, and then fuel burn up, and then lastly, the waste disposal. All these steps have been carried out at Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission, and with indigenous help. Of course, in such areas, it's extremely difficult to get help from anywhere else in the world. Well, my interests have also been in one of the areas that I have been doing at PINSTEC, because I spent about 39 years, but mainly in the nuclear physics and then the computer simulation studies and the other areas. One of very important work which I started was the value addition in with different materials. Northern area of Pakistan is quite rich in minerals and these gemstones. And some of these stones, in the original form, they do have good value, but some stone like topaz, which is semi-precious stone, the dull color, pale yellow color, and have no worth. But if we treat it with different nuclear techniques like electron beam, heat electron beam with gamma radiations, you can change the color and become the attractive color. So you can add value to these. But one very important technique is the nuclear technique. If you irradiate it with neutrons, which we can only do at the research reactor at PINSTEC, it gives blue color. And this blue color is permanent. So London blue and Swiss blue color, these are very popular in Europe and America. Thailand and Indonesia are earning a lot of money because you can increase the value up to 30 to 40 times, not percent, 30 to 40 times increase can be made by this nuclear technique. And this can easily be done because you have not to run the reactor exclusively for this purpose. The nuclear reactor at PINSTEC is running mainly for producing the radioisotopes for our nuclear medical center and for some radioisotopes for these hydrology purposes or agriculture purposes. So reactor is running. You just have to put these stones very near to the core or where the neutron flux is high, and maybe after 2-3 runs, you will get the we have done it and it was well appreciated, but there was a little problem that stone which we got from our Gilgit areas is quite abundant over there. They have certain elements like cobalt-60. Well, if you irradiate, it becomes cobalt-60. So you have to cool it down for a very long time, maybe 10 years. But generally, people when irradiate these stones, and after 2-3 years, they can market these stones. Of course, you have to get the permission of the Nuclear Regulatory Authority because the dose level should be less than 2 nanocurie per gram. So, but we can discuss it, and we have already submitted a project to Pakistan Science Foundation. Hopefully, when it will be approved, then one way is that we can purchase these stones from abroad and then radiate it in the reactor and then sell it to stone. So this is very important factor. So these are some of the areas which we can say Atomic Energy Commission. It's not only Atomic Energy Commission, all other many other organizations in the country or that they have exerted quite a lot. And then one very important thing which I would like to mention, as I told you that I spend most of my time at Atomic Energy Commission, I know a lot because Atomic Energy Commission has so many projects. And you see, all these projects are progressing. I don't see, very rarely there's a project which has been shut down or closed. So all these projects are sustaining and increasing. It's not only the Atomic Energy Commission, all other strategic organizations like NESCOM, KERAL, SPARCO, and they have also exerted quite a lot. And all these, they are progressing in the country. And the main reason for their progress is, I believe that it is the commitment and the sincerity of its leadership. And of course, the dedication and hard work of its work. So these are the things which we are proud of. So thank you very much for this short presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Waqar. But now I would like to know if Dr. Zafar Ali is available. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Waqar. But
yes, sir.
Hello.
Dr. Zafar Ali is available.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. I understand that grappling with technology at times create a lot of problems. But let me, as per the given topic, let me first define what is technology as per the IAEA and the PNRA definition of the nuclear technology. It says that technology that involves the nuclear reactions of atomic nuclei, and that is up to the technologists to further explain and elaborate on. But from the export control point of view and regulations, export control regulations, technology is defined as specific information which is required for the development, production, or use of a controlled item. And generally, these controlled items are reflected in the control lists of the national control lists and the multilateral technology control regimes. Among the notable nuclear technologies are nuclear reactors, nuclear medicine, and also nuclear weapons. It is also used across multiple sectors, as very aptly highlighted by Dr. Waqar. It is used in the scientific research, food and agriculture, industry, medicine, consumer product, transport, water resources, environment, etc., etc. And as per one report, out of the 17 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, nuclear energy in Pakistan is contributing to 12 SDGs. That is, in fact, the importance of nuclear technology for socio-economic development in Pakistan. Also, there is that perception that technology and regulations are often posed as adversaries. Technology symbolizes markets, enterprise, and growth, while regulation represents government, bureaucracy, and restrictions. And regulation can retard all of Schumpeter's 3 stages of technological change, and they are invention, innovation, and diffusion. At the national level, as can you go to the next slide, please? The next slide. At the national level, I requested that if the next slide could be flashed. Yes, this one. At the national level, as I understand, there are two important pillars of a regulatory regime. One is the formal system, which revolves around legislative instruments, organizations, licensing authorities, and enforcement mechanism. However, there is that complementary mechanism also, which one could call as informal system, which is meant to supplement or complement the formal system. And in this area, there would be, capacity building, outreach activities, creating awareness, and strengthening enforcement through other compliance mechanisms like guidelines, internal compliance systems, etc. Pakistan accords utmost importance to nuclear security and technology regulation as a prime national responsibility. Over the years, Pakistan has established a comprehensive and effective national nuclear regulatory regime, which covers nuclear material and other radioactive materials and associated facilities and activities throughout their life cycle. The three pillars, please go to the next slide. The three pillars of a regulatory regime, as very elaborately covered in the monograph, which is available on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website, says that the three pillars are: one, the legislative and the regulatory framework, including the administrative system and measures governing the security of nuclear material, other radioactive material, associated facilities, and activities. The third pillar, the second pillar is institutions and organizations within the state which are responsible for ensuring the implementation of the legislative and regulatory framework and administrative systems and of nuclear security. The third pillar is related to the nuclear security systems and measures which are meant for the prevention and response to any nuclear security event. Within this, the three pillars, under the legislative and regulatory framework, we have the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission Ordinance of 1965, PNRA Ordinance 2001, Strategic Export Control Act 2004, and the National Command Authority Act of 2010. On the institutions and organizations side, the main agencies and organizations which are regulating the nuclear technologies are mentioned here: the National Command Authority, PAEC, PNRA, SECDIV, PSENS, NISAS, and PAEC. These three, the last three, are actually the organizations or institutions which are aimed at capacity building and enhancing the expertise of technologists and scientists. In the systems and measures, the country has prevention, detection, and response system, also material protection, control, and accounting, personnel reliability program, export controls, and enforcement mechanism. Pakistan, as I said earlier, takes this nuclear technology regulation and the security aspects very seriously. And its demonstrated performance over the years manifest that Pakistan has done a lot in this area. Pakistan is the founding member of IAEA and has held its chairmanship of the Board of Governors many times. Pakistan is party to various international instruments that are aimed at strengthening national and global nuclear security infrastructure. These include the Convention on Physical Protection of Nuclear Material and Facility, the Convention on Nuclear Safety, the Convention on Early Notice of Accident or Radiological Emergency. In March 2016, Pakistan ratified the amendment to the CPPNF. Pakistan has also subscribed to the IAEA Code of Conduct on Safety and Security of Radioactive Sources and its two supplementary guidance on import-export of radioactive sources, and the second one is on management of disuse sources. These IAEA codes of conduct are also being used as guidelines for regulating radioactive sources within the country. PNRA regulates several aspects of the nuclear security and provides support, guidance, and recommendations on physical protection, prevention of illicit trafficking, management and security of radioactive sources, and response to unauthorized acts of involving nuclear and radiological materials. Also, can you please display the next slide, which is slide 7. This is how nuclear regulatory system of the Pakistan Nuclear Authority developed over the years. First, it was Pakistan Nuclear Safety Committee, which was established in 1964, and then finally in 2001, as the ordinance was promulgated, Pakistan Nuclear Authority was established. Also, under the 1540, it would be important to mention that as well, which the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1540, which aims at preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and its delivery systems to non-state actors. And Pakistan, as a responsible nuclear weapons state, has been taking proactive actions and measures in fulfilling its obligations under the UN Security Council Resolution 1540. And so far, it has submitted 5 national reports which provide details of all the measures that have been taken to achieve the objectives of UN Security Council resolution, and that talks of having an effective regulatory mechanism and systems over the nuclear technologies and other sensitive materials. Now, once we talk of other sensitive materials, of course, the dual-use items, which are usable in the nuclear industry and in other areas. For that, Strategic Export Control Division was set up in 2007, and it came up because of rapid technological developments, challenges posed by the globalization and diffusion of technology, because of which many of the earlier procedures and regulations were consolidated in 2004 in the Export Control Act on goods, technologies, material, and equipment related to nuclear and biological weapons and their delivery system. Please go to the next slide. Well, this slide is about the functions of the nuclear regulatory authorities. Can you please go to the next slide, which is about Strategic Export Control Division? Yes, this is the different landmarks that have were achieved or in the process towards consolidating regulatory system over sensitive and dual-use goods and technologies. So SECDIV was created as a licensing and implementing authority. Control lists and licensing rules were published, and various programs and capacity building, awareness raising, and coordination with enforcement agencies commenced. Also, licensing and enforcement rules were initially modified and then subsequently revised in 2021. Internal compliance program guidelines have been issued by SECDIV, and also there is a comprehensive guidance document on how the policy that is followed on strategic export control, which was notified in 2016. Strategic Export Control Act 2004 also covers proliferation financing and is considered, and this proliferation financing is considered as an offense like other offenses, and it comes under the abetment clause of the act that includes assistance in any form in commission of the offense. In August 2018, Pakistan established Interagency Committee for Coordination, Review, and Monitoring of the targeted financial sanctions related to proliferation financing. On the enforcement side, Pakistan Custom has the lead role in the agency to monitor, export, or import against the license, whether that license is issued by SECDIV for control list items or by PNRA under their own ordinance. So this enforcement part on the entry-exit point is done primarily by Pakistan Customs to prevent and prosecute violations. Enforcement actions have been taken for violations. Also, national counter-proliferation units have been established, and the NNDA, which is the National Nuclear Detection Architecture, is about to be deployed. That would actually culminate into the installations of RPMs, radiation portal monitors. Since nuclear technology has associated risks to the health and safety of individuals as well as the environment, these risks need to be managed without compromising the benefits of nuclear energy, and the benefits of nuclear energy were very well alluded to by Dr. Ansar Parvez. Pakistan has also equipped the designated entry-exit points with handheld radiation detection equipment to prevent illicit trafficking of nuclear and other radioactive materials. An integrated cargo container control facility is functional at Port Qasim since 2007, which is CSI compliant. CSI is Container Security Initiative. With regards to the complementary mechanisms, and these mechanisms and steps have been taken with the effort that nothing should slip out of regulatory controls. Internal compliance program guidelines have been issued, and SECDIV teams often regularly go out and interact with the academia, the research institutes, and the business community for the enforcement and wide dissemination and interpretation of the ICP guidelines in order for them to establish their own compliance mechanism to avoid law violations. Other measures include the important part of the other measures is outreach, which is important for the exporters to understand that export authorization would be required for sensitive goods and technologies, regardless of the method of transfer. The website of Strategic Export Control has a lot of information and is used for dissemination of information and notifications. Promoting awareness and self-regulations through a comprehensive strategy of reaching out to the industry, academia, research institutes, governmental agencies, and exporters is essential for effective administration of the regulatory regime. Now, this awareness raising outreach is done by Strategic Export Control in its own area and by the Nuclear Regulatory Authority in the areas that they cover. Capacity building of own official as well as the enforcement agencies is done through commodity identification training, which is a very important aspect of the enforcement. Guidelines have been issued for the business community and other stakeholders for them to better interpret and understand the legal requirements. A system of technical reach has been set up. There is a software available on the system available on the SECDIV website, which is called the Goods Inquiry Tool, and the business community or exporters can just click into or access the system to know whether the item is subject to SECDIV licensing or not. Can you just place this last slide? I just have 2 or 3 more comments, if the chair would allow. One, that the Washington-based NTI, which assesses countries' progress in nuclear security, it has categorized Pakistan as the most improved country for nuclear security regime.
Zafar Iqbal sir, since
sorry?
today is Friday, so please let's follow the time.
I just
Okay,
have two
thank
more
you.
comments and very brief. So it
Okay.
has categorized Pakistan as the most
Please.
improved country for nuclear security measures in its Nuclear Security Index of 2020. The digital, just show the last slide, please. The digital and intangible nature of the last slide. Intangible nature of the emerging technologies, the fact that the private sector plays the lead role in developing emerging technologies, and the use of these intangible technologies in a broad range of civil and military applications make them increasingly omnipresent in society. These characteristics are key reasons why the existing regimes and the traditional governmental-led approach to regulations are increasingly challenged to adjust norms and regulations in a way that keeps up with rapid changes in the nature and origin of technology. And one last comment, which is very important. The regulatory arrangements, this is my view, the regulatory arrangements, while preventing proliferations of weapons of mass destruction, should not be allowed to hamper international cooperation in the peaceful uses of technology, including nuclear technology, which is the right of every state. A non-discriminatory and non-selective approach towards civilian nuclear cooperation will be to the benefit of the global non-proliferation regime, as well as achieving the UN sustainable goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Sir Parvez, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Zafar, for your excellent presentation. Before I ask the next session, before I open for the next discussion session, I would just like to add that the reason the Atomic Energy Commission has been a success story is that because of the professional pyramid it has within its organization. A young engineer or a scientist who joins the Atomic Energy Commission can dream of becoming the chairman. This does not happen in any other organization except our military organizations. The army, the military are success stories, and the Atomic Energy Commission is a success story. Let's see WAPDA. WAPDA was created at the same time as Atomic Energy Commission. But WAPDA did not do what we could do in the Atomic Energy Commission. And the reason was that in the Atomic Energy Commission, which has been stated by these speakers, worthy speakers, but I would just like to point out one point in it, that the reason is that the Atomic Energy Commission has all the organizations that are related to its activities within it. It has research centers, it has education centers, it has manufacturing centers, and it has operating plants and operating systems. So I would like to now come to the next session, the question and answer. So we are open for questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the first question is from Niaz Ahmad.
Yes.
Sir, his question is, if the nuclear is the option, what about our indigenization of nuclear power plants, because we are installing by China? So it's to Dr. Ansar Parvez, to Dr. Ansar or Engineer Parvez, but.
जी मैं पहले बता दूं बोलूं ओके एक्चुअली न्यास साहब द थिंग इज के कैनोप का जो वेंडर था it stopped supplying anything, fuel, technology, spare parts to Canop in 1976. And after that, PAEC people operated that plant for 50 years without any external help. So that reflects the level of indigenization. Two, the Chashma nuclear power plants, when they were built by China, were handed over to PAEC, and as a matter of fact, even during the construction, PAEC was involved, and now the operation and maintenance of these plants is entirely PAEC's responsibility. As far as the construction of nuclear power plants is concerned, there are things that Pakistan can do, but naturally Pakistan cannot do all the things because of the very weak industrial infrastructure in the country. If you look at a nuclear power plant, maybe you can say that 20% of it is nuclear, and the rest of the things are just as they are in any conventional power plant. So when we cannot build a conventional power plant in Pakistan by ourselves, we cannot build a nuclear power plant. But this does not mean that we cannot build it or we should not build it. But then there is another aspect of plant that you are building for producing energy, and that is you have made a lot of investment and you want to complete the plant quickly so that you can start generating revenues. So therefore, almost all countries right now have some kind of interdependence on other countries to build a nuclear power plant or any kind of power plant. And Pakistan is a very special country anyway because there are restrictions of getting things from outside. So for us, the best form of indigenization is to maintain our own plants by ourselves and develop the spare parts for them and develop as much of a capability as we can.
Thank you, sir. Sir Parvez, for your input, please.
Excuse me, sir, please unmute yourself. Parvez Bhatt, sir, please unmute yourself.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I would just like, we mentioned, Dr. Ansar Parvez mentioned the desalination plant that was built at Canada. And I would like to add to that plant was built indigenously. It was built by the engineers of the mechanical engineers helped by the electrical engineers of Karachi nuclear power plant. It was done indigenously. That was the first indigenous effort where we used heat to produce. That was the first plant. And subsequently to that, the day the Chashma nuclear power plant contracts were signed, on the same evening, we signed a contract to supply them equipment manufactured in Pakistan. So there has been indigenization. We cannot, of course, we cannot make all the equipment of the plant in Pakistan. Most of the countries in the world cannot make everything themselves. Germany imports things from France, and France imports things from Germany, and America and Canada do this. This is quite common. But we have the capability of making all our replacement equipment and spare equipment and operating them very well. And so this has been, and why has the Atomic Energy Commission been a success story? The Atomic Energy Commission has been a success story because, as I said before, probably, that it is a professional organization. And I wish all other technical organizations outside the armed forces and the Atomic Energy Committee were to follow this, that they should develop their own manpower, own capabilities, and to do things ourselves. This will generate manpower, job opportunities for engineers, technicians, scientists, and it will help the development of the economy of the country. I would like to open the session for question and answers by the participants and by the others who have joined us in this presentations by the three professors.
Sir, Sir, there's another question from
Thank you.
Mr. Zafar Iqbal. And the question is directed
Right.
towards Dr. Zafar Ali. Sir, how do you see nuclear energy to minimize Pakistan's huge energy shortfall as compared to other clean sources of energy? So the question is directed toward Dr. Zafar Ali.
Yeah, so can you repeat the question for him?
Dr.
Yes, sir.
Zafar Ali, please unmute yourself. Yes, please speak, sir.
Yes.
It's-
I think this question.
Zafar Ali should
I,
answer this.
Yes, I will refer this questions to either Sir your kind self or Dr. Ansar Parvez, because this is related to the use of nuclear technology as a clean energy source.
Yeah. Could you please repeat the question, Amber?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, please. How do you see nuclear energy to minimize Pakistan's huge energy shortfall as compared to other clean sources of energy?
Okay. See, the thing is, in the first place, there is a famous quotation which says that do not put all your eggs in the same basket. And this is also true for energy resources. No country, Pakistan or any other country in the world, should never ever depend or rely only on one particular source. तो उसके पास, हर मुल्क के पास एक कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ एनर्जी रिसोर्सेज होना चाहिए जिससे वो अपनी एनर्जी बास्केट बनाए. एंड व्हाट वी थिंक इज इम्पोर्टेंट, अब उसमें होना क्या चाहिए? इन द फर्स्ट प्लेस, जो भी आप एनर्जी रिसोर्स इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि एज इंडिजिनस एज पॉसिबल. इफ यू आर रिलाइंग ऑन इम्पोर्ट्स, तो भी आप देखें जब तेल की कीमत जरा सी ऊपर नीचे होती है, गैस की कीमत ऊपर नीचे होती है, तो फिर आपको उसकी प्राइस पे करनी पड़ती है. जैसे अभी अखबार में आज ही आया है कि फॉर द मंथ ऑफ अक्टूबर पीपल विल हैव टू पे 4.7 रुपीज एक्स्ट्रा पर यूनिट बिकॉज ऑफ द फ्यूल सरचार्ज, क्योंकि तेल की कीमत बढ़ गई थी, क्योंकि गैस की कीमत बढ़ गई थी और व्हाटएवर. एक तो ये चीज होनी चाहिए. दूसरी चीज ये होनी चाहिए कि आपका जो एनर्जी रिसोर्सेज हैं उसके ऊपर आपकी एनवायरनमेंट जो है वो कम से कम मुतासर हो. And the third thing that you have to keep in mind that you should always have some base load operating power plants. मसलन अगर किसी मुल्क की एनर्जी रिक्वायरमेंट 30,000 मेगावाट है, फॉर एग्जांपल पाकिस्तान की आज 25-26 हो जाती है मैक्सिमम, तो हर वक्त 25-26 में 1000 मेगावाट नहीं होती है, रात के वक्त बहुत कम हो जाती है. समटाइम्स इट इज 15,000, समटाइम्स ऑन अ गुड वेदर डे पाकिस्तान की एनर्जी रिक्वायरमेंट 9-10 हज़ार भी हो सकती है. On a hot summer afternoon when all the air conditioners and industries are operating, it can be 24,000. But the minimum base load is always there, which is required. That should be provided by base load power plants. जो seasonal ना हो, जो water flow पे depend ना करें, जो सूरज के निकलने पे depend ना करें, जो हवा के चलने पे depend ना करें. And nuclear is that one base load power plant. तो आपके पास nuclear भी होना चाहिए. And then at the same time, आपके पास सोलर दूसरे रिन्यूएबल है, हाइड्रो. ऑफ कोर्स यू शुड बिल्ड एज मच हाइड्रो एज पॉसिबल, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान में हाइड्रो इज नॉट ओनली फॉर प्रोड्यूसिंग एनर्जी बट इट्स आल्सो रिक्वायर्ड फॉर वाटर मैनेजमेंट. लॉट ऑफ वाटर, रेन वाटर और दूसरा जो ऊपर से ग्लेशियर से आता है वो चला जाता है समंदर में बिकॉज वी आर नॉट मैनेजिंग इट. तो हाइड्रो इसलिए बनाना चाहिए. सोलर ऑफ कोर्स बिकॉज इट इज चीप and it can be used without grid systems at different places. Therefore solar भी बनाना चाहिए और न्यूक्लियर भी बनाना चाहिए. और जैसे मैंने अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन में भी कहा था कि मेरा ये ख्याल है कंसिडरिंग एवरीथिंग, जो न्यूक्लियर का कॉम्बिनेशन होना चाहिए पाकिस्तान के एनर्जी प्रोडक्शन में वो तकरीबन कम से कम 20% होना चाहिए, जैसा कि इस वक्त मेरा ख्याल है शायद यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स का है और फ्रांस का तो खैर बहुत ज्यादा है, लेकिन 20% एक ऐसा नंबर है जो मेरे ख्याल में न्यूक्लियर का मिलना चाहिए, क्योंकि बेस लोड पे ही आपको वो रिलायबली वो एनर्जी प्रोवाइड करता रहेगा ऑल द टाइम. ऊपर से आप सोलर लगाएं, विंड लगाएं, गैस लगाएं, व्हाटएवर, हाइड्रो यूज करें. सो इट्स अ कॉम्बिनेशन, इट्स नॉट अ रिप्लेसमेंट.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your
Okay.
knowledge.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, please. So the next question is from Ms. Sarah Shamjan. Considering the biased attitude of international export control regimes, what are the other options for Pakistan?
ये जफर अली साहब के लिए.
Can you please repeat the question?
Who will give the answer? Zafar Iqbal sir?
Zafar Ali
Sir,
Saab.
I will give views on this.
Considering-
But let me
Considering
first
the
understand.
considering the
Considering the-
bias attitude, sir, considering the bias attitude of international export control regimes, what are the other options for Pakistan?
Right. If I've correctly understood the question, Pakistan, one, that it is not party to any of the export control regimes at this point in time. Though Pakistan has formally applied for membership of the nuclear supply rule, but still the efforts for becoming part of the regime are there. As of now, Pakistan is neither part of the nuclear supply group, the Missile Technology Control Regime, or the other two export control regimes, which are Australia Group and Wasina arrangement. Now, with regards to other options, since there are no other international export control regimes, and even within the regimes, the decision to transfer any technology is the national discretion, and members have been indulged or involved into the sensitive technologies transfer, whether they are related to the missile technology control regime, like, for example, the Russians are now transferring the S-400 system to India, and also the debate over that AUKUS, under the AUKUS framework, the provision of nuclear submarines to Australia is also under debate. So, since there are no other export control regimes and the export decisions are taken based on the national distribution, what I can say is that technically Pakistan should have comprehensive and effective procedures, as I dilated on some of those aspects in my presentation, in order to be technically qualified and eligible whenever the political circumstances are conducive, then it can become part of any of the export control regimes. But technically and procedurally, it should have all the systems, as I said in my presentation as well, and Pakistan is following the procedures and guidelines of the IAEA, which I mentioned in my presentation as well, and other international organizations, whether they are related to the MPCR, the Australia Group, the lists are aligned with the international export control regimes.
So they can now hear me, huh?
So that is what I can say about this questions that was asked them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, the next question is from Bihravar Shahnawaz. His question is, what measures has the government taken for the nuclear waste management? Sir, he has not identified any speaker.
Waste management. Ansar, can I say something before you say something?
Please.
On waste management, in a nuclear reactor, when we operate a nuclear reactor, there's hardly any waste as compared to the waste that is generated by a coal-fired power plant or a gas plant. Gas-fired power plant generates gas. I always give the example of Karachi nuclear power plant, in which the spent fuel, which is the waste of that power plant, is all stored in a swimming pool, which is of the size of about 60 feet by 40 feet, filled with water. And that's how throughout its do not have a large quantity of waste. And this is one of the advantages of a nuclear power plant, that if they're operated properly, if they're operated professionally, as we do in Pakistan, they will generate very little waste. And mashallah, the Atomic Energy Commission has shown, as Dr. Ansar Parvez also shown in his graph, our power plants are operating at maximum capacity, and they're doing a very good job. And the credit goes to the Atomic Energy Commission, engineers and scientists and organizations that support the atomic for this. Maybe some other, you have to, Mr. Parvez, you have some thing to add. Thank you. Mr. Waqar,
Yes,
you
maybe I
would
would like to add. I would just like to mention that in the nuclear waste, there are different categories. Like, for example, there's a very high level waste. Of course, we have to be very careful that it should be properly dumped in, because, this is mainly the responsibility of operator. Atomic Energy Commission is the operator. Of course, there's a very strong check by the Nuclear Regulatory Authority on it. So with the help of Nuclear Regulatory Authority, they have identified places like, for example, the person mentioned, very little waste. So you need not to have a very big space. It's only very small space, but you have to categorize. For example, if there's a liquid waste, then you have some different type of containers. If there's a solid waste, and waste is also coming, not very highly active waste from medical centers, from some agricultural centers. So this is not a big problem right now in Pakistan, because right now we are operating, as mentioned, only 5 nuclear power plants. Only we have 1 nuclear this reactor with very little waste. So right now, this is not a serious problem. When we will have maybe more than 20 nuclear power plants, and then the waste will be coming, of course, they have to be. And Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission has already marked places where they have prepared these repositories, and then definitely it will be very carefully stored in these places.
So, thank you so much, sir. Sir, the next question is from Ms. Chirvanu. So she has inquired, what are the prospects of recent nuclear agreement signed between PAEC and China Zhejiang Engineering Corporation on September 8, 2021 to deepen the nuclear energy cooperation? Sir, anyone from the panel can answer. She has not identified any speaker.
As far as I know, I'm not really aware of the contents of this agreement, but for the last 40, 50 years, there has been a cooperation between China and Pakistan in the area of civil nuclear technology. China is providing nuclear power plant to Pakistan, is providing nuclear fuel to operate these nuclear power plants. And what any kind of agreement would show is that China, as they have already indicated, would continue to help and assist Pakistan in the development of its civil nuclear power plant facilities. So there isn't anything entirely new or different in it that would be different from the way things are happening today.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, Mr. Parvez.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, we have one last question. If you allow that, please.
Yeah. And we have 10 minutes because today is Friday. So in 10 minutes, I would like to conclude. Right. So please, let's have the question.
All right, sir. So the question is, do we have enough nuclear energy fuel for 50,000 megawatt nuclear power plants for the next 100 years?
100 years is a long time. You should only worry about your own lifetime. No, the thing is, Waqar, you want to answer that question?
No, sorry. I was
Okay. Actually, the thing is that whenever we have this contract with China for a nuclear power plant, included in that is the option of lifetime supply of nuclear fuel. The other advantage of this nuclear fuel thing is that once you have it, like you are good for 2 to 3 years anyway. So 2 to 3 years fuel is always available and with us. But right now the fuel is being supplied by China, and there are many countries in this world who do not have their own uranium but are operating nuclear power plants. We also have some uranium, of course, and when Canop was operated, it was operated completely by indigenous uranium. So right now there is an arrangement, and if things come to a situation, then I'm sure that it will be possible to handle the situation.
Thank you. I will just like to make a statement. We laughed when we heard this question. That was good laughter. We still have not looked at each and every square feet of Pakistan to search for uranium. Maybe we find uranium, natural uranium somewhere, and we can mine it ourselves to become self-reliable. Nuclear power has a future, and there are plants being planned which will use spent fuel uranium, converted it to reuse it. So this has been a very excellent session. I would like to thank all the speakers and all the participants for having and all the people who asked questions for made this for this seminar that was held by SVI. And just because of the technical difficulties I have had with the reception of this, there are some problems. I'm sitting in the SVI office. It has been an excellent 2 hours spent over here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Do you want to add?
Time to say goodbye.
Thank you very much to SVI, to Ms. Amber, and the other worthy panelists. Thank you and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
Right.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Beti. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you.